Today, we're diving into a civil war that's raging in a world you might not expect. Beekeeping. Seriously. It's a full-on battle between thousands of successful beekeepers and, well, the entire scientific establishment. And it's all because of one man's really radical idea.
So, at the center of all this is one guy, Hans Beer. Now, depending on who you ask, he's either a complete genius who revolutionized an industry, or he's a heretic peddling unscientific nonsense. There's really no in between. And I mean, his influence is huge. In the German-speaking world, pretty much every single commercial beekeeper uses his methods. He totally reshaped professional beekeeping, promising more efficiency and healthier bees. But in the process, he kicked off this massive debate that has basically split the beekeeping world right down the middle.
So yeah, what's behind this massive split? What's all the fighting about? Well, it really boils down to a single, fundamental conflict. What works in practice versus what's been proven by science.
You can see the core disagreement right here. On one side, you have the traditional way of thinking. Let nature do its thing. You give the bees a big home and just let the colony grow to its full natural potential. But then you have Beer's view, which is all about actively managing the hive, treating it like a production unit to get the absolute most honey out of it. It's a real clash between pure biology and the business bottom line.
All right, so to really get what all the fuss is about, we have to dig into the method itself. It's called the Angepastured Brood Realm, which translates to Adapted Brood Chamber, or ABR for short.
Okay, so the core idea is actually pretty simple, but it's also kind of radical. Instead of giving bees this big empty house to grow into, you use these movable walls to give them a perfectly sized studio apartment, just enough space for what they need right at that very moment. It's a really hands-on, almost micromanaging approach to beekeeping.
And this four-step process is really the engine of the whole system. First, you shrink the hive way down in the spring, using just a handful of frames. Those are the removable sheets where the bees build their honeycomb. This makes a super warm, cozy nursery for the baby bees. You see, with such limited space down below, it forces them to store all the nectar they bring in exactly where the beekeeper wants it, up in the honey boxes that get harvested. You only give them more room to expand when the colony's population actually needs it. It's all about control.
And look, the benefits they claim? There's huge. Beekeepers swear they can check on their hives way faster. They say their bees are healthier because that stable temperature cuts down on stress and disease. And, the big one, they get more honey, even from colonies that aren't that big. I mean, on paper, it sounds like the perfect system, right?
Well, not so fast. Despite being wildly popular with beekeepers on the ground, the scientific community is, let's just say, they are not buying it. In fact, they're pretty hostile to the whole idea.
Major research hubs, like Germany's super prestigious LAVES Bee Institute, do not mince words. They see the whole thing as a giant step backward. They've called it misguided and long obsolete. Ouch!
So their argument goes like this. They say this method shoves bees into an unnatural corset that stunts their growth. It breaks up the hive's natural organized pantry of honey, pollen, and the brood nest. And they also point out what they call the Dadant contradiction, which is, why on earth would you buy a big, expensive hive just to immediately make it smaller? For scientists, it's pretty clear. This is a system that puts profit way ahead of the bee's own biology.
But really, the knockout punch from the scientists comes down to one simple question. Show us the data. Critics say that all these amazing claims, healthier bees, more honey, it's all based on stories, not on actual scientific studies. There's just no peer-reviewed data to back any of it up. It's all anecdotal evidence. But hold on, was Beer's idea really that out of left field? Well, not exactly. To be fair to the people who love this method, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. It actually evolved from a long line of beekeeping innovations.
You can see here how it all builds one step at a time. It starts with C.P. Dadant in the US, who creates this bigger, deeper beehive for stronger colonies. Then, the legendary Brother Adam comes along and basically perfects how to breed bees in that specific hive. And then finally, Hans Beer takes all that work and adds his own twist, this active, dynamic, hands-on management.
And this is where you can see Beer's big idea really clearly. Think of it this way. Dadant and Brother Adam basically gave the bees a mansion and just let them fill it up naturally. Beer took that exact same mansion, but he installed sliding walls so he could constantly change the floor plan for maximum efficiency. He didn't invent the house, he invented a totally new way of living in it.
And that brings us right back to the heart of the fight,
this messy clash between what seems to work in the real world and what the scientific community demands as proof. And this table just lays the deadlock out perfectly. For every single claim of success, like, say, it's warmer and healthier for the bees, there's a scientific counterargument just screaming, "Where's the evidence?" Proponents say it's efficient, critics call it an unnatural corset. They're just talking past each other. It's a complete stalemate.
So how do you break a deadlock like this? Well, we can actually turn to a little bit of philosophy of science here, specifically to a guy named Karl Popper. He had this idea called falsifiability. Basically, for any idea to be considered scientific, there has to be a way you could test it and potentially prove it wrong.
And think about it. The claims that the Beer method makes, they're not some kind of magic. They are perfectly testable questions. You could absolutely design an experiment to measure hive temperature. You could track bee lifespans. You could compare honey yields side by side. The problem isn't that these ideas can't be tested. The problem is that the research, the big, controlled studies you'd need to actually prove or disprove any of this, they just haven't been done. And that has left this huge gap between what thousands of beekeepers do every single day and what scientists can actually prove. And that's because, at the end of the day, you're looking at two completely different standards of proof. For a commercial beekeeper, the proof is right in front of them. Their bees seem healthy, and their business is making money. It works. But for a scientist, that's nowhere near enough. They need hard numbers from rigorous, controlled, repeatable experiments.
So that leaves us with this really tricky, fascinating question. When you have thousands of people having real-world success, but there's no scientific data to back it up, who's right? Does all that practical success count as its own kind of proof? Or is it just a popular delusion waiting for science to finally debunk it? That's the unresolved question at the very heart of the Beer method.